Welcome to Onto Something. Welcome to another episode of Onto Something, where today we're talking to Jana Marx Balden, better known as Jana Marx. She's a journalist for Network 24 who got assigned to the Devilsdorp cult killings, the shocking satanic murders that happened in Devilsdorp as performed by Cecilia Stein and her murderous cult. And it's really fascinating talking to her to get some of her insights, as well as to see how such a light and friendly personality got involved in such a dark and sad case. We hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did. So, today in the studio we have Jana Marx here. No, sorry, I need to... Your surname has been hyphenated now, right? So it's Jana Marx Balden, if I'm not mistaken.
But I still I work under my maiden name, so it's fine.
Do you think that's because I know the high school that you went to was very strong with its like women empowerment. Do you think there's something with that, or? It
might be, and I also have a very progressive husband, so it's not someone that actually enforced his surname onto me. It was actually his decision when my book was released. It was just like a week before our wedding, and I asked him, "Do you want me to release this with my new edited surname?" And he said, "No, it's fine." He actually suggested that I stick to my maiden name because people know me as that name.
Yeah.
So and that I reported on the case under Jana Marx, and if I now release a book under Jana Balden, everyone will be like, "Who the hell's this?"
Exactly, yeah. So you already built up that name for yourself, and you couldn't, like at that point, it didn't make sense to change.
Yeah, I think people at that stage, or maybe still, they link my name with the Devilsdorp case.
Yeah. No, that's very, very cool. So I remember I used to joke with because one of my ex-girlfriends, her parents weren't that progressive, and I would always joke and tell, "No, but when we get married, I think I'm going to take your surname." And they would get like, "That's not how it works. That's not how our people do it." And we'd always joke with them. But I'm lucky you got a progressive husband like that allowed you to continue building, I suppose, on your brand.
Yeah.
And that's you just mentioned the thing, I suppose, that you're most famous for is for writing the not Devilsdorp itself, but writing the book that inspired the Devilsdorp documentary. And that has taken South Africa by storm. Did you ever expect it to be as big as it is?
No, oh my goodness. I hope, obviously we hoped that it would get a big public interest, but it exploded. It totally exploded, and I could not have foreseen that at all.
But surely being as close to the story as you were, and being as intrigued with the story as you were, you knew that this would have some success because it's such a bizarre story in general.
Yeah, definitely. But I think what really baffled me while I was still reporting on the case, because I don't know if it's because it's a more Afrikaans region where this in Devilsdorp where this took place, but it was more the Afrikaans media that covered this case at the time when it was in court. And when the book was released, it was the Afrikaans sales that were doing better than the English sales. Or the book was translated to English, but the Afrikaans was still doing better. And suddenly after Devilsdorp, it's as if a whole group of English people in this country just, they just realized, oh my word, this was on our doorstep the whole time. We didn't really know about it. So it's especially this uprising amongst the English people with regards to this case. People are like, "What? I can't believe I missed this," or "I only read this article, one or two articles at the time," because some of the English media did carry the news, but not as extensive as the Afrikaans news. So the English people, a lot of English, especially on Twitter, a lot of English feedback, like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, but I can imagine if you weren't aware of this, and this is your first... I was tangentially aware of what happened. Like, you read the stories, I think it was over December. Like, for some reason, I feel like I remember huisgenoot with this story sometime over December. And even then, watching the series after, it just uncovers so much. And that's why I want to... I just told you I haven't read your book, unfortunately, yet, but that's why I want to go into that, because I feel like that's the next level. I just want to uncover everything about this because it's such a bizarre thing. Like, every little piece is just But it's presented very well as well, Devilsdorp itself. So the creators of the show, I suppose you were very tightly involved with that.
Yeah, I was a consultant on the show. So the production team, from the very beginning, we had sit-down sessions. I remember my first engagement with them was it was 3 days that I just sat in the studio and I spoke for like 8 hours straight just to get the information on the table, and they continued to ask questions just to delve deeper into the story to see what angles can we explore, what can we focus on, what interviews can be considered. So yeah, that's how we started working together. Just me telling the story over and over again from different angles, then focusing on this, then focusing on that, just to give them a sense of what there is. And we realized, you only have scope for 4 episodes, but you can actually make 40 if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, how long the whole from when you picked up the story? How long has it been until sort of seeing it through the end? How long ago was that?
Sure, I started covering the case in May 2018.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean it's almost 3 years now that I've been busy with this. Actually not, because it's the whole of 2018, 19, 20, it's almost 4 years now. So yeah, then it was the court case, and then that became a book, and from the book Devilsdorp then happened.
Yeah, no, it's so awesome, and I mean it's awesome to see someone like you. When I watch this with my friend, I'm like, this girl lived next door to me when I was growing up. You won't believe me, and now she's on TV covering all of these crazy things. Do you think as you say, the Afrikaans helped a lot, obviously, because this was very much it happened in an Afrikaans region. But do you think the nature of the event itself was sort of rooted in the Afrikaans? Because the Afrikaans culture is very scared of Satanism and that whole story. Do you think it was a product of that as well?
Definitely. I remember when I was still small, growing up in Bloemfontein, same as you, we did encounter this satanic panic. It was a thing that was very big in the 90s. It's not that prevalent anymore, but at the time, I just remember this whole rise, and you remember that DVDs, Mark Your Huiskwin, and all that. Everyone was just throwing things away. I remember I lost my Harry Potter books in that whole thing, because you can imagine the church we were in were also, conservative in that sense, and this was very big there. And yeah, it's actually the same. You can draw the parallels between Krugersdorp and Bloemfontein. The same sort of community, Afrikaans conservative churchgoers.
Yeah. And
when this happened in Krugersdorp, and people got the sense of this satanic background, or what they thought was a satanic, maybe satanic motivation. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the crime anymore. It was the satanic crime, and suddenly everyone was up in arms, and adults were scared, or parents were scared that their children would get involved in these things. And yeah, so that's definitely played a role. I think if the same crime happened in Joburg, it would have also, caused a very big uproar, but maybe not as big as in that Afrikaans, more or less, conservative context.
Yeah, and I think that was something that fueled it a lot, because as you said, that Mark Your Huiskwin, and people, it's very much regional dependent, because I spoke to friends, my flatmate, for example, is from Stellenbosch, and he had no idea of any of this. And I'm like, this is the way that we grew up. At some point, everyone in Bloemfontein just got rid of all of their fairies and all of their indigenous sculptures, everything had to go out. Mm. And it's weird that that is the way we believe things. But then on the other side of things, then you look at, in Devilsdorp as well, you see that room that the guy has with all the dolls and all the things these Satanists use in their rituals. And did you ever wonder to yourself whether there is some power to this, or was it never?
Yeah, well, I'm a Christian, so from the very beginning I was thinking, what is this really? Is this really dark forces or whatever? Because it's really not really something that, if you are Christian, that you engage with or even know about. I think I just think that's the context that we grew up in. And so, I wondered what is going on here. I didn't really think about dark forces per se, but I was just wondering what the hell is going on, and what is the role of religion in all of this. That's the one thing I wanted to uncover. I wanted to know, what is the role of religion. I studied theology, and I was just so interested to know, what. Was she actually a Satanist? Was she actually faking, or Satanist faking Christianity? Or what exactly is going on here? So I think the whole religion thing around this was the most interesting thing for me.
To you, yeah. So
Absolutely.
In that context, it almost feels like you were chosen for this role. Did it ever feel like I'm perfectly situated to report on this story and to dig into this? Because from my perspective, at least, I can't imagine a better person to land onto something like this. Did it ever feel like this is...
Well, I think all my worlds came together because, I started with media studies, but I realized, no, I wanted to niche in journalism because there are so many journalistic students and I need to differentiate myself in a way. So then I started with theology, but along with the theology, I took psychology subjects. So when I entered this case, now I'm a journalist working in court. So now the psychology is coming in, the theology is coming in, and I'm sitting in court covering a story for journalism.
And you're just loving every second of it.
Absolutely. And I think what was the most interesting thing for me about this whole case, my biggest aha moment, as we're speaking about religion and so, is the moment I realized Cecilia faked everything. She wasn't a Christian. She wasn't previously a Satanist, because that was also a whole story. She manipulated her people by telling them she was an ex-Satanist. She was converted to Christianity now, but she was such an important Satanist that they need to follow her, almost like a Messiah figure. You can imagine a typical cult, And I really, if you think about Charles Manson and so on. Those people were actually very, very religious people. And the crimes happened, but they were actually religious. Cecilia wasn't.
Was never.
She wasn't a Satanist. She wasn't a Christian. She was just playing into people's emotions, playing into people's beliefs.
She was brilliant, though. She has a certain brilliance. Let's put it that way.
I always say I don't know about the intelligence. I'm not sure, but emotional intelligence very, very high. She knows which buttons to push, and she's a very good researcher. That's the whole thing. I don't want to give her credit for being as incredibly smart. If you think about your Ted Bundy and all that, you can see, if you watch the documentaries on TV, you'll see that's an exceptional, brilliant person. Cecilia's whole world was made up. If you go back to all the, the past cults, the big American serial killers, she loved them. She knows all of the biographies by heart. Charles Manson, Sons of Sam, and all that. If you go and look at Electus Bedeo's, Cecilia's cult, you'll see bits and pieces of all of them. So she couldn't even fabricate her own unique cult. She had to steal.
She had to copy from someone else.
Exactly. So, and you can actually see that in court. If I'm being accused of serial murders, I will have one hell of a defense. But she came to court and she had no defense whatsoever. Her defense was, I can't remember. No, I don't think so. No, she will listen what everyone says and then she will respond to that. She had absolutely no defense. So I was actually a bit disappointed. I mean, for this cult killer that killed, that ordered people to be killed, 11 of them. Yeah, I mean, she's not that. she's not that impressive, though.
Yeah, my flatmate also works for Discovery, and when the Discovery guy came on in Devilsdorp, we started cheering. The minute the man gets involved, I mean, we know we work for that place. They're very much on top of things. So.
No, I was very impressed with that interview, with that testimony, though. Yeah, Shane was definitely one of the key testimonies in court.
Just seeing straight through everything in me. But that's the thing, she, as you say, she's got emotional intelligence to identify people and to work with their weaknesses. Now you introduce this force that she's not familiar with and she didn't choose to deal with it, then it becomes difficult for her to manage. But if you leave her on her own somewhere, she would create a crazy following for herself.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's still ongoing, and that's actually, it's a very disturbing thought. The day she got sentenced, I remember I was sitting close to a cop. It was just the investigative officer is also married to a police officer, and his wife was in court that day, just to witness the whole judgment and everything, or sentence judgment. And that day, she said, I remember her saying, now our problems are starting, because you can imagine Cecilia's going to prison now. She'll never see the outside of prison. I'm almost 99% sure of this. But other people will come out, and they will get out of prison with Cecilia in their heads. I mean, if she managed to manipulate people outside of prison as she did, can you imagine what she can do in a little confined space? And I actually learned that she is now counseling people. And that is just warning bells all over the place for me.
In prison now?
She's, informally. It's obviously not a formal...
counselor,
it's not a formal correctional services thing. But she is herself... she now gives counseling. And I'm really worried about this, because people are going to get out of prison. And who knows?
With her ideas in there.
Who knows what they will do,
It is... Do you, like you mentioned some of the other famous cult leaders earlier, do you think there's what do you think is the thing that makes them, if you meet that person, do you think there's a magnetism behind their personality that's difficult to pinpoint, but there for each one? Because I can only imagine that they must have incredible personalities. Like if you spend time with that person, it must be a fascinating study.
Yeah, cult leaders are typically very charismatic people. If you meet Cecilia, let's say in the shop or something, you'll immediately like her. She's a very well-liked person. She's fun, she laughs, she makes jokes. So she's a nice person to be around.
Yeah.
And that's like I've said, I haven't met Charles Manson and all that, but I can imagine that they also had that charismatic personality, because that's typical of a cult leader. First they lure you in with their friendliness and their acceptance, and then they start playing on your emotions, and then it becomes more intense. But definitely a friendly person, but very, very smart to know what your weaknesses are. Yeah,
zero in on those and just turn you absolutely to what she wants from you. But I mean, that's a scary part of this as well, is the as you say now, these were people who looked like every day, this is the equivalent of, so luckily you were in the news for the right reasons, but this is the equivalent of me opening up the paper and seeing your name there for killing 5 people.
Exactly.
That is what happened to this community. Someone who went to school with them was now suddenly a serial killer.
Exactly, and that's also I think the second part, apart from satanic panic part, what really, really shocked the people. They knew the people who were killed. They knew the killers. And like we've said, I mean, the victims were picked on that base, opening up a newspaper, seeing an ad from a realtor, calling that realtor to come and show you a house, and then you kill that person. So people were really, really scared. They were scared to make appointments. They were scared to go to meetings.
Yeah.
If it's outside an office space.
That's why I laughed so much when I setting this whole thing up. I'm like, the irony of this whole thing is not lost on me. I promise you it's going to be safe. You're going to go into this random empty house with no one there, but I promise you it's going to be okay.
Yeah, when you told me it's an empty house, I was like, okay, do I have to put on my live location or something?
just share with someone, keep them on the back. But because I mean, are you scared for yourself sometimes now, given what you've worked on and what you just said about these people coming out as Cecilia in their head?
No, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of anything relating to this case. Not at all. I think I'm just more cautious in general. I realize that the profile of a criminal has changed. It's not someone that you will encounter in the street and you'll say, okay, goodness, that's a dodgy person. Let me just keep the distance. Yeah. It can be anyone, and you need to be cautious. Not paranoid though, because you can't live like that. But you need to know. You need to lock your doors. You need to know. There are certain things we can't do anymore. You have to tell people if you are going somewhere. Drop locations. Do that. I mean, I remember growing up, and I just after my studies, I was doing a lot of freelance work, and I had a boyfriend in Johannesburg, and I was still living in Bloemfontein. I would drive to Joburg after work on a Friday. I mean, you actually get here at 9 p.m. I remember always struggling to find his house because it's Johannesburg. I know Bloemfontein. And we didn't have Waze, so you'd still drive with that, that GPS you put in the window.
The old Garmin GPS.
Those ones. And they don't know the new roads and everything. And I was always getting lost and always stopping next to people asking where I should go now, where's this and where's that. And I didn't think anything of it. I'll never do that anymore. I think, so I'm not scared of the people relating to this case. I'm not scared of the people that might come out with Cecilia in their heads. Just to comment on that maybe, people know how close I am to the case. If I disappear, that's the first place they're going to go. So I'm not worried about that. But I'm definitely more cautious. And writing crime and still being engaged with all the news and the crime in Johannesburg, and we're actually in a national platform, a news platform, you know things.
That's actually something that I wanted to talk to you about as well, is your how this has impacted the way that you interact with the world, I suppose. And you basically just answered that, like just being more careful in general, and
just being more careful.
But where is that line between being too? Because I often feel like we are too scared as well, if that makes sense. Like we don't want to go for a walk because we're worried we're gonna get. And as long as you, in my opinion at least, as long as you sort of at least safe about it and logical about it, you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think we have so many tools available to us to actually protect us. If you look at live locations, for example, or even there are apps. I mean, my insurer has a panic button, so I have this app on my phone, and if there's a problem, I can push that panic button that will send a response team. So I just think you need to just think about this. Just think about this stuff and just don't be irresponsible. But I would rather err on this side of caution. I would rather be too cautious, especially being a woman.
Yeah.
If there's any doubt in my mind of any place I need to go, then I would rather put measures in place to make sure I'm safe, or to change if it is that I need to change a venue or whatever. I mean, I've had to do interviews in the past in very, very dodgy places. Now I would rather ask the people to get me in a more, centralized space or public space.
Yeah.
I would usually,
just like small little adjustments to just tip that scale in your favor.
Exactly. But we can't be paranoid. I mean, you won't be able to live in this country if you're paranoid. But get the smash and grab and do what's necessary to keep you safe. Rather safe than sorry. Yeah,
no, I do agree with that as well. I had a weird incident where I struck a pothole and I got a flat wheel next to some random road between the R and Bloemfontein. So now I'm on this little tiny road. I'm parked next to it, and it's a tiny thing, so I can't pull out of the road properly either. So now I'm worried about cars hitting me, I'm worried about everything, but I need to replace this wheel. So now I start jacking up. Next thing I know, there's two colored guys standing right behind me. And your first reaction is to freak out. Like, I remember my heart freezing for a second. I'm like, is this it now, right? And then they're like, perfect, well, in colored Afrikaans, they're like, nah, our car's broken down, just 400 meters down here. We will help you replace your tire if you can come and jumpstart us. And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do this.
Let's do that.
So, I mean, there's still a lot of good in the country as well. And if that's why you need to get that balance, as you pointed out, because if you just close yourself out the whole time, that's also no way to live, basically.
Absolutely. We have a crime problem, and that's everyone's problem. Everyone in every area in this country, no one wants to be a victim of crime.
Yeah.
So, definitely, we need to help each other to stay safe from people that do want to hurt us.
Yeah. And I mean, this is also kind of messed up, but as you said now, earlier, for you as a woman, it's especially bad. I mean, that's part of what, it sounds terrible, but that's what makes me feel safe. I can go walking at night because I know I won't get jumped because that guy would rather get someone smaller or more vulnerable than I am. It's unfair that is the case, but I mean, it's difficult to fix as well. Like, your weakness is almost my safety in this context, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, definitely makes sense. And I do know it's not the same everywhere in the world. I mean, I worked like as a correspondent, actually on an exchange program in Amsterdam for 2 months, like 3 years ago. And there I walked in the evenings. I didn't mind.
Yeah.
And I mean, there it only got dark about 11. Yeah, I think it was 11 p.m. And even after that, I was still able to walk in the streets, and I felt safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a big problem in South Africa. Not only in South Africa, but we do have a problem here.
We're very oversensitized. I remember we were walking, as you say, like to some bar in Prague, and my friend and I. So we were a bunch of people from our hostel, and my friend and I, we were walking at the back, and we heard someone running behind us. And we immediately turned around, fighting stance. And I mean, I've never been in a fight in my entire life, but we turned around ready to like defend ourselves. And it was a little girl running away from her. We felt so ridiculous because everyone else from these like European countries looked at us like, oh, are you guys okay? But I mean, it's weird that we've been sensitized to this point that your first, when you hear someone running on the street, your first reaction is to think.
Exactly, your heart starts beating and you're thinking, okay, should I run away or towards that person or what's going on?
But do you think it's getting better?
No, I don't think so. I still think we have a hell of a way to go to make this better. I see a type, sort of an uprising in societies where people want to, they want to protect themselves. So that's how the civil organizations, how they help, neighborhood watches and all that. I see a big uprising in that, and that helps people a lot. And I think that's fine, that's good. I mean, the police can't be out everywhere.
Yeah.
So you need to have people to be your eyes and ears, definitely. And I do appreciate in municipality, especially now in Johannesburg, we also got the cameras, CCTV cameras in the neighborhoods. Many people are protesting against that, but then I would just say,
it's balancing all things. Actually, you're never going to make everyone happy.
Yeah, and it's actually to your benefit. I mean, I really don't mind anyone watching me in the street if I know it's for my safety.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, I suppose it sort of is this thing of just the number of people, I suppose, in South Africa with like who perform crime out of opportunity more than like evil, if that makes sense. I mean, I do you maybe that's an interesting question to start with. Do you think good and evil exists as like concepts? Like, do you think there is?
Yeah, well, there are definitely people that are inherently evil. There is no two ways about it. Think about Cecilia Stein.
Yeah.
I mean, that killing people might be the
epitome of
absolutely. So no, definitely we have people that are really plain through and through evil. Definitely. And those people should be removed from the streets. They should be removed from society before things like this happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, almost more clear example of that would be Michaela.
Yeah.
In terms of how she was always good, and they tried to sort of put this evil onto her, and the good in her there was always this little seed, that little bit of resistance. And when that in the show gave me chills, to think like that made me believe in good and evil.
No, I definitely believe that, and we have also brilliant people, good people. Think about Gift of the Givers, what they are doing every single day. I can't, there's so much good in this country as well, definitely. Yeah,
but we just it's that I actually spoke to Carla Pretorius, our netball captain in our first episode, and we also spoke about the fact that whatever you're focusing on is what you're going to see. So if you walk around and you're looking for the bad news, it's going to be there.
Definitely.
But if you're looking for the good news, there's massive amounts of that as well. And if there isn't, then go and sort of make your own small good news.
Yeah, and I mean, I named the charity organization now, but there are small little charities happening amongst us every day. People doing good.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you've said, to actually just see those things and to make that your reality, not to look at the crime stats every year and think, here we're going again, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, again, I think crime and evil is not necessarily connected, if that makes sense. If someone who steals or even kills on the street because of circumstance is a different situation from someone who kills out of the enjoyment of the act itself.
Yeah, I agree with if someone steals a bread to feed children, I mean, that's something else. It's still punishable and it needs to be, otherwise we're going to become a banana republic. But you can't, that might be a devoted father before it is an evil killer or an evil person. Not look at the killer, but because a person stole something. But
how do you think you unlock that? I mean, what is the mom's name again? From Devilsdorp?
Michaela's mom.
No, not Michaela's mom.
Ria.
No. Sorry, my memory is failing me now. The two kids' mom.
Oh, Miranda.
LaRue and
Miranda Stein.
Like something like she's fascinating.
She is
to me, right? Because I mean that feels like someone who's always been latently evil and now only got an opportunity to act out on it.
Yeah, there's not a lot enough information available about her past, but what I know, there are a few things that you can pinpoint and say, okay, maybe this was the beginning of the derailing or whatever.
But I mean, it's easy to say so in hindsight. I'm sure if you look at anyone's past, you can say, in matric they were bullied, or somewhere they broke their arm and they were stuck at home for 2 weeks and they got bored, and like everyone has sort of things, I suppose, that you could point to.
So the next question will be why did she become a serial killer and the rest of us with all of our little things didn't? Yeah, so I think that's definitely a part of a psychological thing as well. There has to be something for you to derail like she did.
To that extent.
Yeah, to that extent. No, definitely. It's definitely psychological. I don't want to say I don't want to classify her because she hasn't been diagnosed.
Yeah.
But there's definitely personality issues there. There are definitely pathology in her head. But we just don't know to what extent. But there's those things, I mean, you can see if you talk to her while she was still in court, or even when she testified after she was sentenced, because she testified on behalf of Cecilia as Cecilia's best friend. That was part of their whole plan. Mm-hmm. Even then, you know, she the details that she divulged, it was a sadistic killer talking. I mean, the way she described, she was so proud. There's no way.
That's insane.
And the thing is, it's one thing if you kill one person, then you can say, okay, sorry, but rage caused this or whatever. There are many sorts of defense that you can have. But in her case, she just continued. It was one after the other.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way. I'm definitely not saying that a killer can ever justify killing.
Yeah.
But even for her, there was
all levels to the game still.
And she, I mean, there's no way that you can say, she went through something bad and then one person was killed in the process. No, this woman continued, and she was extremely proud of her successes because that's how she saw this.
Yeah. Like this is something that she's been wanting to do all her life, and she now just got an opportunity.
And that was her exact words. I felt this relief as if I wanted to do this my whole life. That was exactly her testimony.
That is terrifying.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, that makes you think, do you think there are many people with such impulses, but they just don't get the sort of platform, I suppose, and Cecilia just provided them with the platform to live that way? Or do you think, I guess we have to hope that it's not the case, that there are many people like this walking around?
Yeah, well, I do think if maybe use the word derail again to that extent, it will happen. Whether you'll find your platform somewhere. If someone doesn't present you with a platform, you will create it yourself. Definitely.
So you think it was just the perfect storm?
I just think it was the perfect storm. Cecilia provided this perfect world for them to develop as killers. Maybe it wouldn't have been to that extent if they got into another group or whatever.
Yeah.
But that extent of being fanatic about things, because that's one very big thing of cult members. Are very, very fanatic about their religion.
Yeah.
And you'll find that somewhere. If not at Cecilia's, you'll find that at another so-called church.
Yeah.
Or group, or maybe they would have become part of a big drug syndicate, because that was also things that they didn't mention in Devilsdorp. But that's a very big key thing. If you read the book, you'll see the narrative of drugs coming from the very beginning. Cecilia, there was so many drugs that went through her house, and that's part of the cops' involvement. That's also volume 2 for this story. But there are cops that being suspected of being part of this, and the drugs, there is a big motive. So Marinda at that stage were using already. Even before she met Cecilia. So if she didn't meet Cecilia, she would have met someone else, and maybe killings would have...
she was just in this fraught circumstance. It would have happened. It would have happened somewhere.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that is fair. I mean, I think the sort of cast just came together too perfectly in this. But I mean, across the good side as well. I mean, on the positive side, then you look at someone. So my flatmate and I, Ben Boyson. Whenever Ben Boyson...
What an awesome person.
What a character. Like, you just see him and you immediately... I think after the second time, we were just like, he's Ben fucking Boyson. He's not just Ben... he's not just Ben Boyson. He needs that added to his name at this point, to be honest.
No, he's an amazing person. And he's so dedicated. He was so dedicated to this case from the very beginning. I didn't know him at that time. I only met him at court when he was sitting in as the investigative officer in the case. But I mean, the way he assisted me with information when I started to write the book and I wanted to verify stuff and whatever, he just knows everything. I mean, I see myself, I did a lot of research. I think I know a lot about this case, but Ben Boyson, he's a book on 2 legs.
Oh, really? So
it's amazing. No, it's amazing. And but what's actually so beautiful for me, still, if you talk about some of the victims, I mean, obviously he built this relationship with the victims' families while he was investigating the case, but he will sort of start crying.
I could tell.
Yeah,
I think in one of the Devilsdorp things as well, he's talking and then you see he's getting emotional now.
Exactly. He's quite a softie.
Do you think that's part of his power? He gets invested in it so much that he can...
I think that's the thing. I think it's not just a case for him. He's really, he told me something once. I just want to remember the words, but it was something in the line of, someone told him thank you, and he said, that's more worth than my salary.
Yeah,
because that's what it's about for him. It's this is a calling for him. Being a policeman was a calling for him. It wasn't just a job.
Yeah, it's not a 9 to 5 going in and then you clock out and then it's over.
Not at all. I mean, he felt very sick while he was investigating this whole thing, because he was busy the whole time. He got a pneumonia or something, and he kept on working. And then he totally collapsed. He was he was taken to the hospital and everything, and now he has a heart problem. He has a problem with an enlarged heart, and that was because of the stress, because he just continued to work. He couldn't stop. He wanted to solve this thing. He saw the terror, he saw the trauma, and he wanted to fix this.
Stop this,
Yeah.
I mean, you spoke about the fanatical sides of cults and cult leaders now. That's sort of the good side of...
Maybe.
That's a weird thing. You get this... It's traits that are, if construed wrongly, they're bad traits. But being fanatical or very passionate about something is not bad per se. It's just the way in which they presented it in this case.
Exactly, and that's a big theme in this whole story. I mean, if you look at religion again, you have people that really, religion consoles them, and then you get Cecilia's idea of religion.
It's a tool. It's just absolutely a tool.
Exactly. So religion in the wrong hands can also be really, really devastating.
Yeah, and I mean, this might seem like a weird question to ask now, but how do you, if you now have a friend and they go into a church and you hear they're doing slightly weird things, at which point do you think you get involved with a friend and tell them, listen, I'm slightly concerned with this? I mean, if it's doing wonders for them, they have all of the energy in the world and they're feeling inspired and they're feeling motivated. When do you tell a friend, listen, I think maybe...
Yeah, no, I think, just be a good friend. I mean, if someone is dating the wrong person, you can see it. You can see that person is damaging.
But I mean, Zak on paper looked like...
Yeah, exactly.
It looked like a catch, right?
Exactly. But I mean, if you see there are signs, telltale signs. Let's say you are you have a friend and that friend is dating someone very dodgy. And you can see that this friend is emotional. She's very, very negative about the world since she started dating that guy or whatever. If you're a good friend, talk to her about it. Same with the church. If she goes to a church where suddenly you hear, because that's what I actually encountered while I'm studying cults. It sounds horrific, but yeah, I mean, I'm obviously more in touch and looking around me. I heard about someone, a guy that actually gave away all of their money. It was a little family. He just gave away all of their money. Pension funds, policies, everything to the church. I mean, and you as being a good friend, you need to get into that and say, no, come on.
That accountability.
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, someone has to talk to someone before something like that happens.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to hesitate because it's a church thing. Just be a good friend.
Yeah, but that's people aren't good friends. I know this is going to sound weird, but I've seen so many people be on my periphery now being in a relationship with someone, and you can tell this is not good news, but you're too far removed. So you're not going to be the person to tell them. I mean, it's someone who you see, let's say, you see them only over Decembers. Now, it's not your place to go to that person now and tell them, listen, I think your fiance or boyfriend or whatever is no good.
Oh, well, you hope that that person has people around them that will be able to do that.
But I mean, I suppose that's one of the first things that a cult also does is cut off your other frames of reference. So as soon as you can isolate and you can be the only source of truth and reality,
absolutely,
it makes it a lot easier to start controlling people.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what happened here with Electus Bedeus. Every one of those members were part of a church. Interestingly enough, I stay in the same region as them. I stay in Randburg, and some of them, like Michaela, for example, they were in a Dutch Reformed church in Randburg.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to a Dutch Reformed church.
Yeah.
And suddenly, Cecilia told them whatever churches they belonged to, their pastors were actually working for the devil. That's what she told them. And that she knew better and that they needed to listen to her truth. And by doing that, she told them the same about family members, friends, and by doing that, she just kept them in her little circle.
Yeah, and I think it gives, they feel empowered as well, because now they feel like they know something that the world doesn't know. They've been let in on the secret, and the world's blind, and it's almost like this anti-vax thing. Yeah. to some extent at least, right? So I think anti-vax people, to a large extent, is just taking back control. Like, I can't believe these sheep are following like crazy. I'm the owner of my own life.
You get the people that have really good medical reasons for not being vaccinated and all that.
But that's hesitancy, that's not anti-vax.
Yeah, but you get those who really would just, someone told someone's friend and someone's cousin, you know that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you receive that WhatsApp message. And it's very, very, very responsible for one, because you are professing a message that you can't even base on real facts.
Mm-hmm. But what are real facts nowadays?
Yeah,
That's the other problem. And
especially in religion. You can't, in religion you don't have those facts. So you get the issue that you say, but God said.
Yeah.
And suddenly everyone is like, okay.
You can't disprove or prove or...
Yeah, because if you disapprove or if you don't agree, then suddenly you're not maybe that devoted Christian. You don't want to...
be on the outside.
Yeah, you don't want to be the lightweight Christian. You want to believe. You want to be the person that follows this person that says she hears directly from God.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened here.
No, it's crazy how she performed that. And I mean, as you said, something like that. Do you remember this? Sorry, this is now... I wanted to ask you about... I don't know whether you remember this. And it was probably when we were about I was about grade 8, 9. There was a story of a witch in Warania, like your high school.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Did you ever hear that story? But I think it was classic, like Satanic Panic.
Okay.
I think it was just one of those stories that there was the story went that there was a girl in Warania Hostel who went on to Naval Hill, because it's right there across the street, Moss. And Naval Hill was known for its...
yes. That is also Satanic Panic banner.
yeah, but there was some crime there as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of crime, yeah.
And whether it was satanic or not is very debatable. But the story was that she went there and she performed some sort of ritual, like a sacrifice or a sex ritual, anything that scares Afrikaans people. She went onto Naval Hill, she performed this ritual, and that gave her certain powers, and that in Warania Hostel, there were like strange things happening at night because of this.
Oh my goodness, no, it was after my time there. So no, I don't know about that at all. That's so weird.
But I think it might have simply been like a strong story started by someone from a different school or whatever. But it's just so weird how it was in the sort of the cultural collective thought that it was just so prevalent that I heard the story from multiple people. If that makes sense.
Oh my word, I wonder who's the girl in question. I'm very curious.
She doesn't even know that she was a Satanist.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but
poor girl.
It's cool actually, the stories. I mean, every school sort of has their own ghost or whatever. But I don't know whether you, if you Google top 10 haunted places in Bloemfontein, Jim Fuchsia High School is actually one of them.
Oh, really?
Because, so the story goes that there was this girl, Salome.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to tell you which parts are fact and which parts...
Okay.
I think you'll be able to differentiate quite easily. But what happened is this girl disappeared.
Okay.
She was, let's say, grade 11, matric-ish, disappeared. And she was gone, missing for a year or whatever. And then, it was sort of, everyone knew it was, there was no hope of finding her or whatever. And then after a year, our swimming pool started bursting. So they got a team in to come and repair the swimming pool. And as part of the repairs, they had to hack it open. And where they opened up the swimming pool, they found her bones. Right underneath the crack.
Oh my word.
That is and that seems, what I've just said to you from what I've sort of, my research now, has, it's apparently all true. And I mean, things like that makes you think a bit.
Yeah, that will shock a community like Bloemfontein in its core.
Yeah, exactly. Because JF is a bit of a poorer school, so the swimming pool was actually built by the community. So they're thinking what happened is one of those people knew they're going to come and throw the concrete there tomorrow or whatever. So I'm going to, if I bury her now, they'll never find her. And then it cracks in that exact spot.
Yeah, well.
You mentioned earlier that you're Christian. Did this strengthen or sort of take away from this whole ordeal?
Yeah, I don't really think it affected me in any way. In the beginning, I was just feeling a bit uneasy. What am I dealing here with? Because obviously, like I've said, I think that's just growing up in a Christian home. You try to avoid anything that sounds...
It's what mom said
I think
you try not to deal with it.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not in that context at all anymore, but I still thought, oh my word, what is this now? So I think it was just like an uneasy feeling. I don't know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, the uncertainty of like...
Yes, and the moment I realized, but oh my goodness, whether those things are true or not, in Cecilia's case, this was all fake. It was actually, I think, on a religious level, it was easier for me. And that's a thing that the state prosecutor also told me from the very beginning. He said the problem with the first police investigations is they focused on satanic murders, whereas this was actually murders. It was just cold-blooded murders. Okay, now we know there were no satanic anything at all there, but the moment you start thinking that, what is the role of religion or belief, the moment you pour, these are prosecutor's words, it's actually very good, the moment you pour the religious sauce over something, it tends to get very muddy. So I think it helped me to actually go through, work with the facts.
Yeah.
The moment I realized, no, don't look through religion lens or anything. Let's put religion aside
and
first and look at the facts. There you get 11 cold-blooded murders, very, very brutal murders, and then I actually afterwards I actually realized, okay, but religion was just a tool.
Yeah. And I mean, that state prosecutor was brilliant as well.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
In terms of the way, from what I understand at least of the law, the way they wangled it in order to get Cecilia in.
Absolutely.
Like as part of the racketeering and those sort of charges against her.
It was the first time that this ever happened in South Africa that killers were convicted. In terms of the POCA Act, the POCA is a Prevention of Organised Crime Act, and you usually use that piece of legislation to convict CITs, cash in transits, or bank robbers. So that's the legislation they used for this conviction because they realised Cecilia wasn't on any scene.
Yeah.
And how can you link someone to a scene if they were never there?
And she was going to walk then.
Exactly, she was going to. I mean, they wanted to pin her down because she was the mastermind.
Yeah, you leave her outside, and in 10 years, it's just going to repeat itself.
Exactly, and I mean, the whole group wouldn't have been a group if it wasn't for her. She was the glue of the group. So they used that the act, and it was brilliant because they just needed to prove that group was actually operating as an enterprise. Murder enterprise, but they were operating as an enterprise. They were doing whatever they were doing. In their case, it was killings, but they had to prove that this group is doing stuff for the common, for the groups. But the group's common purpose.
Yeah.
And that group is being led by a leader. And they actually
CEO, you almost want to. I mean, it becomes eerily similar to a company.
And that's exactly the analogy the state used. They said Cecilia sat in that Kusana Flats where she lived, the apartment block, and she was like the CEO. She made the plans and she instructed people to do...
Managed finances.
Exactly. She had a finance person, she had an operational person, she had a COO, and that would be Marinda. And she would have her foot soldiers doing all the dirty work, the children. There was Marcel and Leroux and Zach and so on.
Yeah.
So, it was actually a company set up. And the moment they were able to prove that, they could convict her of all the charges.
Yeah. I mean, that, to some degree, again, that's the good versus evil. If you look at someone who's running a company that does very well, that's someone, I believe, with a similar personality to Cecilia. But just using it in a way that's for good.
Not a destructive way.
Not a horrible, absolutely destructive
exactly,
way.
Yeah. Because you need certain traits to do these kind of things. If you need to keep a group intact, you need to do A, B, C.
And they were operating for a while. It's not like it's... And when things started getting shaky, they tried to maneuver and stay together, but I mean, in the end, they were just...
the end just didn't work. I think with just too many plans, that's the thing. It became too big, and Cecilia, she also created the story as it went on, because she had this whole fabrication about who she was in a previous life as a Satanist and what she can and can't do, and how she's being terrorized by the demons and everything. But ever so often you would realize that she, it's almost as if she's in a corner. She lied herself right into a corner.
Yeah.
But then she would just, create a new lie, and it makes sense for the people. Even if it didn't make sense, the people didn't worry about that, because it was Cecilia telling them this. She was the source.
They were deep enough under the spell at this point.
She was the source. So whatever she says, even if it didn't make sense to them, it was fine. They just believed it.
Yeah, and I mean, the sad thing is, someone who I feel very sad for, someone like Ria, who, throughout this whole thing, she's like this exemplary example of goodness. I mean, she was literally just always trying to do what was right and good throughout this whole thing. And she got shortchanged so badly in the whole setup, right?
She's definitely one of the biggest victims in all of this. Although her own ministry, under her own leadership, started to derail. I mean, we can't leave that out. They were focusing too much. Like I've said, if you're going to look for something the whole time, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
So her whole ministry was actually based on looking for Satan.
Misguided.
Yeah, it was misguided from the very start, or maybe from when Cecilia entered her life.
Yeah.
But she is a victim in all of this. She's still living under an identity that we not even know, and we don't even know what it is. She recreated her whole life. She had to, because if you go and Google Ria Grunewald, you're going to find all of this dodgy stuff. Who's going to employ a person like that?
Yeah, exactly.
So she had to recreate her whole world, and she's living in a province. I know where she is in the area, but yeah, she's living under a new identity, and she was actually very, very scared to come and testify. The state prosecutors told me it was one of the first. I mean, the main prosecutor, he was at retirement. He retired like the year after the case was closed, and he was in the game for about 40 years. And he said it was the first time in his life that he encountered so many scared state witnesses. They had to draw people from witness protection. They had to, it's not just calling you and telling you, we're going to subpoena you, can you please come? Because you can't have a resistant or a hesitant state witness. You want your witnesses to work with you.
Yeah.
So you don't want to force, you just don't want to just subpoena someone, because then they're not going to cooperate with you.
Yeah.
And it didn't work to just phone or email as they usually do. They and the investigative officer together, they were a little team, the two prosecutors and the cop. And they had to fly all across the country and visit people in person. Because, for example, Ria, when they started communication to come and witness and all that, or to come and testify, she just said, no, how do I know you are who you say you are?
Yeah, exactly.
Over the email.
Yeah.
Because that's what she's used to. I mean, Cecilia texted her. Cecilia emailed her and the group members as other people.
Yeah.
So she was scared to death.
It wasn't irrational of her to be scared.
In her context, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So they had to go and visit her and tell her, you know what, this is us. We are really busy with this. Here's our credentials. We are actually employed by the MPA. We're employed by SAPS.
Yeah.
We are investigating this. This is how far it is. And we will keep you safe.
Do you think that she sees this for what it is now, or do you think she still believes there's satanic powers that...
She definitely sees Cecilia for who she is.
Yeah.
But she still believes in many of the satanic powers,
Okay.
For example, Cecilia, one of the lies she told the people was that she had dissociative identity disorder, DID, multiple personality disorder.
Yeah.
And Ria still believes she has that. Because Cecilia would suddenly just change, she will turn into whatever personality is apparently now surfacing. Obviously, all a big acting game for her.
And whatever suits her at that point.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. She played the personalities to suit her goal or a particular part in her story that she was playing day by day.
Yeah.
Ria, for example, still believes in that.
And I mean, we don't know how that presents, because it's something that's so rare.
Exactly.
So I mean, we've got no idea, and even if you Google, I don't think Google's going to give you clear answers. So if someone now comes and tells you this I mean, if someone starts acting like a different person, you don't really question it that much if you already have some belief in this person.
Exactly. If that person already established that ground that, I was this high-ranked Satanist and this was part of the things that I'm still battling with or whatever, you don't know how that Satanist was supposed to act. So you'll just say, okay, all right, shame, we have to help you now.
But I mean, the things that happened, some of the things seem obviously fake to us now looking back. I remember specifically the one where the lights switch on and off, and you can just see her sort of reaching out and hitting the light switch, and you're like, surely guys, like at some point, you must have started wondering at least. Do you think a part, like, for some of these people, like for Marinda, for example, do you think a part of her knew it wasn't real?
Everyone at some point, everyone at some point realized this is not real. I call it the aha moment.
Yeah.
Everyone had an aha moment at some point. Maybe in the very beginning they were all still, they still believed this was a whole religious war. But definitely,
at some point they realized.
Yeah, definitely.
But then they were in too deep at that point too.
Yes. They couldn't get out anymore. Or, remember, Michaela tried to.
Yeah.
But then they killed her off. So that was the other fear, obviously. But I'm very, very cautious to not make the cult members look like victims, because they are not.
Yes.
Even the smallest, or the one that was still small when it started, Marcel, she was 14. You can imagine at 14 you do what your mother tells you. If your mother tells you to kill someone, or to go with when people are being killed, you do that. But
I mean, when you're 14, you're rebellious as ever. You're a teenager now.
Yeah, you are. No, that makes sense.
So I think she was it was more looking to belong somewhere.
But at some point, I think for her, I think it was more because they were so isolated. They didn't have any friends, or they couldn't bring friends home. They didn't really have a normal teenage life growing up. But at some point, you're not 14 anymore, and you realize something is not right. And this is not, like with the example we used earlier, this is not stealing a bread or something. People are losing their lives. This, to me, it's unforgivable.
Yeah.
There are many people that are trying to say, but shame.
The kids.
Poor Marcel. Yes, but Marcel was 18 when the last killings happened. 18, 19. I mean, just remembering while I was still in school, I always wondered, we had a constant message from the school. You can talk to this person about this, to this teacher about this, to this teacher about this. I always wondered, wow, do children ever go to these teachers to talk about these kinds of things? Yeah. So, I mean...
We're very lucky with how we grew up.
Yeah, but I think it was the same in the school Marcel was in. I really think it was the same. I think there were enough people to actually help her.
Do you think they had the correct...
I think so, because she was in a very, very good high school.
Yeah. What school was she?
Monument.
Yeah.
Hoërskool Monument. Monas.
Yes. Because I've got friends who went to school and they obviously were very close to this. And she actually mentioned this friend of mine, her brother's ex-girlfriend's dad died during this time. And it was ruled a suicide and then later changed to a murder, apparently. And they say that they still wonder to this day whether there was some involvement there during that time.
It can be. Which year was that?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. She just told me
well, if they are wondering, I mean, remember the 11 murders that were on the indictment? The 11 murder charges.
They were sure of.
Those were the ones they were sure of.
Yeah.
There are about 2-3 others. If you read the book, you'll see I mentioned them. There are 2-3 others that are linked, that the investigative officers suspect to be related to the group. But yeah.
You rather don't persecute on them because then it falls through.
Yeah, you
weakens the rest of your case as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a life sentences for every charge. So if they could at least get 11, I mean, if it were 13, it would have been better. But if you at least are sure of 11, that's they're already going to prison for life.
Yeah.
So the state just needed to get a solid case to put these people away for life.
And they managed to do that in a spectacular
Yeah.
fashion. I want to explore your personal story and how you feel because throughout your life, surely there were a lot of things that equipped you with the tools necessary to deal with this. I don't think it's anyone who would have been able to take the story and run with it to the way that you've had. I think part of it is because you felt, surely there was something of feeling the story needs to be told. Like for the victim, it sounds cliche, but for the victim's sake, I suppose.
It sounds cliche, but it's definitely the case. I mean, even my book I dedicated to the witnesses and the victims, because I see some of the witnesses as victims as well, and their families. I think I have a quote that, it's not my quote, it's Martin Luther King. He says, the moment we go silent about things that matters, you start to lose yourself. I'm paraphrasing now, it's not exactly the same, but it comes down to, I can't shut up about this.
Yeah.
Because I see it as a form of justice. I see it as continuing justice, obviously. Not just for the victims, also for the victims' families. And I wanted to write the book. There are many, my personal motivation. There are many things that motivated me to write the book, because not all of the court cases obviously becomes books. But I wanted to make sense. That was the one big thing. I wanted to make sense because the court case only used the information that was necessary to get a successful conviction. Mm-hmm. And I wanted the whole story. I wanted to understand how everything fits together. So that's one thing I wanted to give. I wanted to be able to produce a whole document with the whole story.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I wanted to answer unanswered questions, and especially for the family members, because there are many things that they even were still wondering about.
Yeah.
And that's also the feedback I got.
I wanted to ask that you get feedback from
that's the
them.
feedback I received. They would tell me, this gave us, now I knew what happened in that final moment. So it's
similar to Ben Boyson's thank you. I mean, that's probably some of it to you as well.
Like I actually told one, many people can send me messages to say, we read the book and whatever, but the moment I get a message from one of the family members, it's just like, I couldn't ask for anything more. So that's one thing. And the justice for the victims. Those victims, they were killed. They're not only killed. It's one thing to shoot someone over a distance, but these people were brutally murdered. And we're talking about someone like Michaela. She's my height, about 165, and she was stabbed about 65 times in her upper body. I can't even think, where can you stab?
65
to
times.
To be able to stab someone 65 times. So it's very, very horrific killings, and I didn't want them just to be part of murder stats. They needed some mention to remember them, just because their murders were also it was senseless. It wasn't, even the money Cecilia got from some of the killings, it was like 1,500 rand. People died for 700 rand. A couple died for 700 rand.
Yes, that's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
Yeah.
So it's important for me to, I don't want to say immortalize, but maybe that's what happened actually. The victims, and to give the family members some comfort, answer some of the questions. And the justice thing, the ongoing justice thing, the more we talk about this, people can argue and say, the media doesn't really have an effect on parole committees and all that, but they do have. The more we talk about this, the more outraged the public becomes, the more difficult it gets for people to get actually successful parole applications.
We put pressure on these institutions
exactly
to really do what they
need to do.
What's expected of them, I suppose. It's sad, I suppose, that is what's needed, but I think that's part of active citizenship, and that's partially why you need to vote. Sorry, just sidetracking completely, but that's part that comes into voting as well. Like,
Absolutely.
you need to make your voice heard within all of these things, because you might underestimate your like presence or how much influence you have, but in the end it matters that your vote counts as much as a billionaire's vote.
Exactly, because can you imagine if 3 million people think like that?
Yeah.
Think, the other people will vote. No one will miss me.
Yeah.
If enough people think like that, no one's going to vote.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happens. Then only the people who get incentivized through other means to go and vote would actually show up there.
Yeah, so that's why I'm still continuing with this case. I mean, it's not finished. Devilsdorp is finished, but I'm still putting pressure on the NPA with regards to the second investigation, and that's into some of the police conduct, especially relating to the first murders. So there are some
things that have been missing.
There are a few suspicions there that they might have helped to cover up some of the first murder investigations, because there were relations between Cecilia's side and the cops. There were friendships
with the drugs,
friendships, that as well, but friendships and so on. So that they said hunch that maybe the cops tried to actually to just close the dockets, because the dockets actually went missing. That's the other thing. The actual paper dockets went missing. So the moment of the first murders. So when Ben Boyson started to investigate, he couldn't find any of that. He had to start over. I mean, then he's working like respectively.
Yeah, and you're working on things that happened
exactly already. I mean, his old affidavits and everything went missing, and he had to try and go gather that evidence again to be able to build this case.
Ben Boyson.
Yeah, what a hero. He's amazing. So there's a lot of things around the cops. It's about 4 cops, actually 3. The one has been suspended many moons ago. But in essence, 4 cops has been investigated by SAPs themselves, by the corruption unit.
Okay. I mean, that's terrifying that we're in a country where you're scared of your police force.
Yeah.
That's not supposed to be the case.
No, it isn't. I mean, the argument from the family side is, especially the later victims' families, will say, if the police of the first that actually conducted the first investigations, if they did their jobs, maybe the last couple of murders wouldn't even have happened.
I mean, it's very easy to...
It's a good assumption. I mean, it is a valid assumption.
Yeah.
So, and even during the court testimony, a lot of things came to the surface where witnesses who testify, Cecilia gave knives, for example, to this one colonel. And in the same sense, we know that there was never any murder weapons that were found.
Yeah.
No, that might have been, who knows? So that's what they are investigating. And the fact that, they were investigating for so long and nothing happened. They were actually, the case in 2012, the police actually, they realized something was up, and Cecilia was already a suspect then. Some of the members, they were already a suspect, not even a person of interest, but a suspect.
Really?
But the case was it was just a horrible case. It wasn't finished. It wasn't well done.
Well documented, probably.
Exactly. And it wasn't enough evidence. That's the whole thing. So the state received the docket at the time, and they just told me that they couldn't prosecute this because they weren't prosecuted. They can't waste the court's time. Not to prosecute if it's not a solid case. They need to have a possible the possibility of a successful conviction before they will even decide to prosecute.
They wouldn't have gotten that on the
No. So that's all of the things that's being looked into.
Investigated.
Have these people trying to cover up the crime, or try to cover up the crime? That they try to jeopardize the cases that they were working on?
Because you don't know whether it's active sabotage or whether it's just ineptitude causing some of this sometimes as well, or do you think this goes beyond?
I think it's a bit of both. I think the one was definitely it was obviously it's allegations now, but my suspicion is that the one was an act of sabotaging.
Okay.
Yeah. Because there were 2 cops on the team, and it was the one that pushed the weird agendas and that continue to push the satanic narrative. I mean, if you are a cop working in that area, we have a cult unit in SAP. So where in the world do you have that?
I was
now can you imagine? I mean, then you have to know, Mos, how that looks.
Yeah.
I mean, if I show you the police docket photos of that first murders, you won't even think for a moment this is satanic related. There's absolutely no sign.
And that person immediately...
And I'm a layman in that. I'm not an investigative officer. If I can see that, how can't you, as a cop that's investigating this...
Yeah, it's your bread and butter every
Exactly.
day.
How can you continue to push a satanic panic or satanic narrative if you... Oh my goodness. For example, they did find, just to be fair, they did find like candles, a lot of candles in the one lady's house. I also recall load shedding at the time, so that makes sense to me. There was a lot of books, like learning, like study material with regards to occultism. But that specific victim, she was actually presenting Ria's cause.
So exactly.
So you can't just look at that and a lot of blood. The other thing that I said, it's excessive murder because there's a lot of blood everywhere. You can't just look at the puddle of blood and say, this is definitely the work of a Satanist.
Satanist killed, there's a lot of blood all over the place.
So the way they thought about this, it doesn't make sense to me. I wasn't there at the time. But for me, if I look at the docket, if I look at the photos, it just doesn't make sense at all. I don't know why they went that route.
But do you think... I suppose this is a very weird question to ask so late in the conversation, but in terms of satanic powers, do you believe there's any backing to it or none whatsoever? Do you believe there are people with a relationship with dark forces that can use that in the real world?
I think, that's very interesting. Remember, there are different kinds of Satanism. You get the Anton LaVey, which is more atheistic.
See, I don't know these things.
And this is actually the Church of Satan, the Satanic Church in South Africa, is actually an atheistic church. Okay. They don't believe in Satan as a person. I would rather say that's more the kind of Satanism, that's actually what Satanism is, and then you get satanic sects that might focus more on the dark and the... But as a Christian, I do believe that there's a Satan, but I don't think the satanic groups necessarily worship Satan. That's a thing that I think a lot of people, also especially maybe from Christianity side, I think it's something that we endorsed. The whole idea of if you're a Satanist, then you are evil and you are sacrificing cats and you're sacrificing people. That is not. I don't. As I've said, I'm a Christian, so Satanism is obviously like even the opposite of what Christianity is. That's what people sees. What people see. But for example, the Church of Satan that's based in Cape Town, they are atheists. They are not.
The chill people.
They are not going to sacrifice, and it's a lot of. So I think there's a lot of controversy around this, and we need to know all the different. I don't want to say the different routes, but there are different kinds of Satanism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the question still remains: do you believe there is some power within? Yeah. Do you believe some people as a Christian, you surely believe that some people hold positive power through Christ and God. Do you believe the same for the dark side, I suppose?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. There is an evil, I definitely do.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see if that still remains, because I mean, for me it wasn't, the series sort of made that clear almost, that you almost can't, well not obviously, but there's good versus evil, and then surely if there's people who can manipulate this evil energy, there must be some power somewhere there. It's terrifying to think of it, because as you say, we prefer not to deal with such, but
But I think what I wanted to do by explaining the whole atheistic and that thing, I think we need to learn more.
Yeah.
We need to not say, yeah, we're Christians, so we don't want to know more about Satanism. I think we need to understand because, I mean, as a Christian, I'm not a Hindu. As a Christian, I'm not a Muslim. What makes the Satanist worse in my eyes than a Muslim or
any of the other people?
Exactly. Are we really enemies? It's just an interesting thought for me. I just think we need to explore. Everyone that professes Satanism is not going to sacrifice your cat.
Yeah.
You need to know that. Just like everyone that is part of Islam is not going to fly into the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
So it's very important.
And I mean, that's the problem. You ask me, the extremist and the sort of fanatic people, unfortunately, they get to represent the group.
Exactly.
And that's what happens in South Africa at this time as well. We have we spoke about it earlier, we have these two extremes in South Africa, extreme left and extreme right. And we're letting them speak for everyone.
Exactly. I see myself as a middle ground. And it's as if my voice doesn't really matter that much because I'm not that fanatic.
Yeah, you're not that fervorous about any. I mean, by definition, you're sort of okay with this, and you see the advantages of that, and you see a little bit of this. But I feel like we're not getting a chance to really voice that in South Africa.
But also to come back to learn more from one another. I think we are so quick to just say, I don't agree with you, so you must be wrong. And so by actually acknowledging what you say, what your position is on something, that doesn't mean you aren't going to change my position. It just means that I'm making space for you to be you.
Yes, exactly.
And to actually understand, I think that's really not only with regard to religion. Think about the vax and anti-vax thing again. By just saying, I'm pro-vax, so I hate all anti-vax. I mean, there are surely really people legitimately against vaccinations, and there are very good reasons for it.
Yeah.
Just because you don't want to, because you're hesitant doesn't mean you're anti-vax, for example.
Yeah.
So we need to delve deeper into narratives, I think. And not just create our own narrative around our own perceptions and stick with it.
But people don't listen to each other.
No, they don't.
People talk and they live past each other. But you have no idea what this person next to you. I mean, you can live with someone for a long time, I think, and then only when faced with like a certain scenario, you realize, oh, this person actually doesn't believe in something that I always assumed they would hold up. And it would help a lot if people could just start talking to each other, and then you would see, in the end, we all want the best for ourselves, for our communities and our people.
Exactly. And by listening to you doesn't mean I agree with you, doesn't mean I believe in what you believe in, but at least I listen to you.
Yeah.
Now I know what you stand for, and suddenly you're not a threat anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's, if you go back to Christianity, Satanism thing again, the moment I understand, oh my goodness, I mean, you just said what? You didn't know that the Satanic Church of South Africa were actually atheists.
Yeah.
The moment you realize that, it's not this white and black thing anymore, representing good and evil or whatever. It is
just two groups doing their own thing.
It's two groups, and I don't agree with them. I don't want to be a Satanist, but I'm not scared of them. I'm not scared. I don't need to watch my cat.
You're not worried of your cat being kidnapped.
Exactly.
I remember I don't know where the cat stories even began, right? Like that was so ingrained in us as well. Like the first thing, if you think Satanism, you think cats.
I think that's part of the narratives, not only the satanic panic, but I think, like I said, it's satanic sects that really that actually do a lot of evil in the name of Satanism, or even call themselves Satanists. I mean, those are the things that actually it's not new. It's actually something that happens. Not even a narrative in our own minds. It's actually something that happens.
That's super scary. I mean, it's weird for me as well to make that jump. Because what you just said, all of this darkness sort of that you dealt with, from my youth, this sort of light and like very easygoing and sort of like a comfortable person. So would you say dealing with that has changed you, or do you think it has actually strengthened your resolve in just being who you are and doing what you do?
Yeah, I think definitely the latter. I mean, I realized that I am, or actually I was my whole life I've been inquisitive.
Yeah.
But I've just realized, I think the resolve thing, yeah, it's important. Even if it's a court case, and we always say court case, all the facts are in the court already. You sit in court and you
sort them now.
Yeah, and you cover the case and you get all the facts from the court, from the testimony, whatever. That's your story. It's coming from the court. But I think I think it's just strengthened the whole thing that I like asking questions. It's okay to ask questions. And now I'm in a position at work where I do more investigative stuff, more in-depth stuff. So now I have the opportunity to actually be inquisitive. I think this whole thing sparked that for me, that I wanted to do more of that. I wanted to delve deeper, do more investigative stuff. Yeah. And now I'm doing it.
I mean, I wanted to ask earlier as well, during the height of your investigation, how, were you sleeping in weird, did you ever spend a night in your car somewhere in Krugersdorp, or were there ever late nights where you did bizarre things just to get some information on the story?
Yeah, well, I visited Cecilia's parents on their plot. I went for a braai.
At her parents?
Yeah, I went for a braai. In Randfontein. There's also that, for example, we just spoke earlier about me being more cautious now. Yeah. That was still part of the time where I didn't even tell people where I was going, and it was in the evening, and it was actually quite dodgy, that area. not there with them, but it was actually quite dodgy, that area, because it was the plots in Randfontein. You have to you drive out of the city actually. So.
And how was that whole experience?
It was very interesting. Now, it was very interesting. Up until today, her dad knows she's guilty. He has said it in the past with a lot of resistance from the mother. She doesn't want to believe it. The mother is also very angry, or her mother is very angry at her father for actually believing that Cecilia is guilty. But they do change their story from time to time.
I think it's a very difficult place to be, right? I mean, this is the person that you raised from.
Exactly.
Little baby.
Exactly. No one raises a child to become a serial killer. I mean, come on. Yeah. And another thing is, I see them as victims as well. Now, like I've said, there are obviously things that might have happened in her past that might have contributed to whatever happened. We don't know all those details. Yeah. But from what I know now about them is they can't even go to the shop. They need to send people, because people will spit on them. People will shout them and curse them. And you can imagine, they are Cecilia's parents. Their lives have fallen apart. Just the road of destruction or devastation that this group left is so wide. This stretches so much further than the victims and their families. Cecilia is a mother. She has 2 children. Can you imagine growing up thinking my mother is Cecilia Stein, she's in prison for this and this?
Yeah.
So it's really it's horrible.
But so she actually has kids as well?
She has kids. She has,
But they weren't involved in any of this?
They were just small. They were still very minor. They were not even 10 years old.
Okay, so...
Started when they were about 4, 5 or 6.
Yes, this is insane.
Yeah.
Because I just saw the article on her husband saying that he knew nothing of what was good. He was just, I think the exact quote was, I was just playing cricket. Or
he was playing cricket?
I was just playing cricket.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. The Rapport Courant, Report newspaper also mentioned that he's one of the people that are being investigated. He's a cop as well. One can ask, how didn't they know they were living under the same roof? Mm-hmm. What I do know from the evidence that was presented, the weird things and the planning and all that happened in Cecilia's room, where she stayed alone. Her husband didn't share a room with her. And the high nights, in the documentary, we also showed footage of the high nights and the attacks and all that, the fake attack, she being attacked by demons or whatever.
Yeah.
She planned that around his night shifts.
When he was out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
there is some credibility to his claim.
There's definitely some merit around that.
No,
but
so.
many people just say, how can that happen? I mean, I've been at Kusana flat. It's a very small flat. Even if there are 2 different rooms, it's still small. But if Cecilia can get people to believe a certain story, she can be just as good as preventing someone else from learning the same story.
Exactly, from just living this triple life at this point.
But the investigation is still ongoing, so let's see how that plays out.
Yeah, so that's happening now, and you mentioned something about a volume 2, if I'm not mistaken.
If we get a positive decision, positive will be that they decide to prosecute from the NPA side, then we might even include a new chapter, maybe even we'd add a new episode to Devilsdorp. I will definitely justify it. But let's see what's going to happen, because the NPA is sitting with the docket. It's incomplete at the moment, so they're still waiting for the investigation to just be more thorough. You see, what happened is the moment Cecilia and her crew, when they were sentenced, then the docket with regards to the cops were handed over to the cops.
Okay, so only at that point.
Yeah, but that docket went to, apparently, that's according to my information, went to the unit where one of these cops are stationed.
But how?
So that docket, because it's very high up, and you take it straight to your higher levels, higher ranks. And then that docket disappeared. Because I was inquiring, and I remember calling, it was right after that. I wanted to find out, is this now ongoing and what's going on? And I just keep tabs on the investigation. And I remember, I actually, from myself, and I called the head of that specific unit that was transferred to. And I asked him directly, and I told me that I'm not really supposed to talk to cops like that. We can't obviously quote them and going to get into trouble. But he didn't know at that time who I was. I did identify myself as a journalist, but I didn't think he heard me, because afterwards he only realized, talking to a journalist, he referred me to the media, to the media protocol, which I obviously also did. I will never jeopardize his job. But when I asked him bluntly about this investigation, he said he has no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't.
That sounds eerily familiar to Cecilia's whole defense, basically.
Yeah, but I definitely I believe him, because I don't think that docket ever reached him. As the head of the unit, I don't think so.
Somewhere in the middle, someone cut it off.
Exactly, because one of the members has been investigated, or somewhere in the middle. So that's obviously a suspicion, we don't know. So what happened, I then phoned national police. I told them I thought something is up here. And I sent them the evidence I had, because from the court, it's public domain.
Yeah.
Cops' names are mentioned there. And I asked national police, how can't you not investigate this? How? And they asked that, they actually said, whoa, this is quite big. And I said, but there's a docket already, but it's gone. And then they started to get a bit flustered. And then Ben had to then create a whole new docket. Because that docket was gone, it's still gone.
Yo.
So what happens now is, long story short, the second docket with regards to the police.
But surely it's not as complete as
that's the problem. Yeah. That's the problem. So now that docket has been handed over, but now the NPA is still missing stuff. And I think that's some of the stuff that are missing, because Ben said some of the affidavits he couldn't get again, because maybe someone died or whatever. we're in a COVID time.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are some of the very crucial affidavits missing, and I think that's what the NPA needs. That's why they can't decide yet if they want to prosecute or not. They're sitting with the docket, but they refer it back to the police to.
But we can just hope that something comes up that they can. I suppose it's possible for evidence to still
emerge, definitely. Yeah. And the thing is, the moment I hear they're sending it back, then it's actually positive for me, because they're not actually considering it.
Yeah. There's some activity.
Because they can just decline. That's what they usually do. They will just decline to prosecute. That's what they did in 2012, 2013 with that first docket.
Okay.
With regards to the murders, that's what they did then. So the fact that they are asking for a more comprehensive investigation tells me they're actually considering.
Yeah, but I would like a volume 2 or another episode.
Can you imagine?
Because that was already says. I mean, I told you earlier. I suppose people who don't know, this is Devilsdorp on Showmax, and it is just such a wild journey. Like I heard about this from. Well, I was aware of this, but it was also a busy time at work, so I didn't have any time. And then we went to a braai on that Saturday, and some of the people there asked us, "Did you watch Devilsdorp?" It became such a braai topic. They're like, "Did you watch Devilsdorp?" And I'm like, "No, we haven't."
It's a conversation starter.
No, you were literally an icebreaker. I think there were quite a few dates probably had in this COVID time with people, like awkward first dates and like. Het jy al Devilsdorp gekyk? Like just somewhere there, because it's just such an easy thing to talk about because it's so interesting.
I remember it was so funny on Twitter. So when people started to watch Devilsdorp, there was actually this outrage against people who haven't watched it. So someone will tweet, so and so and so, all mentioned, can you please watch Devilsdorp? We need to talk about this.
They wanted to get them on board.
Exactly, because people wanted to talk about this and they couldn't because everyone hasn't watched it yet. So yeah, it was quite a hype at the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. So they asked us, have you watched Devilsdorp? And we're like, no, we haven't. But my flatmate was there, but I don't think he was part of that conversation. So the next day I told him, let's give this a shot. I think it's going to be good. And as I said, we watched we finished at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were just like, I don't know, I'm going to sleep right now. I just feel so energized and traumatized at the same time.
No.
Because it's such a roller coaster, such a great cast. And I mean, you really do a very good job when you came, because you come up, I think you're the first person who starts talking in the show. So when you start talking, I was like, okay, Philly, I know this girl. And then, it's really very awesome to watch. So anyone who's listening to this who haven't, although I think the people who listen to our podcast has probably already watched this story, but if someone is listening who haven't watched it yet, I would highly, highly recommend it.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting the book. That will be delivered to me on Wednesday. So then that'll be my reading for the coming times. And I want to thank you for coming through for the recording today. I mean, always when I reach out to people, I'm always a bit apprehensive, how will they respond? Because I mean, we haven't seen each other in years.
Yeah, many years.
Yeah, exactly. You were a little blonde girl neighbor of mine growing up, and it was just awesome to catch up and to still see your passion for this story, and then also just story and truth in general.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's. Well, I hope that's the takeaway from today.
That's 100% what I took away from our conversation. It was really nice to catch up with you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everyone that listened to me. I tend to ramble a bit about this, but because I get so excited.
No, I think people are going to hang on your lips while you're rambling. Yeah, we're very excited for this. Especially now, I mean, it's Halloween season, so I think we'll release this episode with Halloween, so a bit of a spooky setting.
Yeah, with a bit of background music in the beginning.
Yes, exactly, just working some ambiance. Thanks a lot, Jana.
Thank you so much, Yanni.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Onto Something. What stood out for me from that episode is how Jana absolutely doggedly decided to chase down every single detail involved in this case in order to bring justice and closure to the victims as well as the families of the victims. And never once during this entire process did she let the darkness and evil of this case dim or consume the light within her. Truly a remarkable person. We hope you enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And let's see what we're on to next.